Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode on how to do audit and compliance for your Power Automate desktop installation on Windows. In this video, we'll be looking at what the options are in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager, where you can use to generally sort of govern, machine deployed through Intune. So, Thomas, what are you showing us today?
Hi, Pranav. Hello again. Today, I'm going to be showing you some compliance policies on the Endpoint Manager and how to create conditional access policies based on those compliance policies. So if we go to Edge again, we can go to the Endpoint Manager console, endpoint.microsoft.com. We'll click on Devices here on the left-hand side, and then come down here to Compliance Policies. Then we'll go ahead and create a new policy, and we're going to create a Windows 10 policy. Go ahead and call it anything that you want. In this case, I'm going to say, Power Automate Desktop, Compliance Policy, and go ahead and click Next. Now, some of the configuration policies that we can do are not specific to Power Automate Desktop. They are specific to Windows 10 Health and will not actually pertain to the Power Automate client itself, but more over a health of the Windows 10 machine that Power Automate Desktop is running on. So you can choose things in here like requiring BitLocker or requiring secure boot and code integrity. These three I do recommend leaving as required. This will just make sure that any data at rest that's stored on this machine will be encrypted. I don't typically set a device property minimum OS version or maximum OS version for Windows 10. A use case for that might be if you wanted to disallow certain versions of Windows 10. Let's say your company is always running 21H1 and you want to make sure that they are on the latest build, you could come in here and you could set 21H1 as the minimum OS version. And then if they were running 1909 or 1809 or whatever, it would actually mark them as non-compliant. And I'll show you what we can do with that later. But that would be a use case for that. Most of the time, though, I would just leave these blank and configure and continue on. Configuration Manager compliance. This is if you're running in coexistence mode. Coexistence mode is a feature where Configuration Manager on-prem is set up to co-manage a Windows 10 device. So if you're not using SCCM in your environment, this does not apply to you, and you can leave this as not configured. The next section here is related to system security, and it has to do with passwords on the device. So minimum password length, password complexity, password expiration, stuff of that kind of nature. Typically, you will just match these to your corporate password policy, and you will just mirror that policy in here, and whatever it is, alphanumeric. Let's say you also require special characters and a minimum password length of 9 characters, let's say. As long as this matches your normal corporate policy, the device should stay compliant, but that now you will get an alert if something falls out of compliance, and you can create a conditional access policy based on that later. And then finally, encryption. So if you're using a third-party encryption other than BitLocker, this is where you would configure that. So instead of configuring it up here, you would say this is not configured. And you would, like, let's say you were using semantic secure boot or something like that, you would require it here. If you have a corporate firewall policy, you may toggle these on or off. This only checks to make sure that a policy is there. It does not specify how secure that policy is. So it's not it just checks a box that says, yes, a firewall policy has been enabled on this device. Not, it doesn't say anything about the security of the firewall policy itself. So I just want to make that clear.
And that's a great point. And I think this is about like sort of managing the health or of the machine itself. But if you want to add more protective rules around it, you'll add more sort of your networking policies in place. You could also, through Microsoft Cloud Access Security, add monitoring for your endpoint, where you can detect whether there are anomalies in terms of how the machine is being used. So, for example, one of the attended or unattended machines could go rogue, and maybe they're exporting data to unknown IP addresses and stuff. So, Intune sort of becomes this generic policy holder to see, what is the health of the, machine. And then you can also sort of leverage other Microsoft services to then further enhance either the networking layer, or you want to sort of extend the endpoint monitoring layer and stuff. So that's a good concept where these Lego boxes. I see these Lego boxes sort of come together across Azure, Intune, and Power Automate as well.
Correct. Good point there. Yeah, any additional security policies will be configured outside of the actual compliance policy itself. So very good point. Finally, we would go ahead and complete the policy once we've gotten this how we would like. And we would mark the device as non-compliant immediately, or we could set this up into a grace period of, say, 7 days or something like that. So that way the device doesn't immediately get marked as non-compliant. You'll still see it in the console as non-compliant, but the user will be able to continue to work for a certain amount of time out of compliance. You can also do some other cool things like send an email to the user, or you can send an email to the help desk, for instance, or if you have a ticketing system, you can send an email to the ticketing system by adding an additional recipient here. And you could have it say, hey, this computer name has fallen out of compliance. Please remedy me. And then it'll generate a ticket in your ticketing system so you can follow up with the end user. Once we're not going to do that this time, but just it's cool to know that functionality is there. Then you go ahead and add this to your Power Automate install groups that you want. So, if let's say you had a Power Platforms team, in demo, or you can add it there, and then you would complete and build the policy. Now, once you have the compliance policy, what you can do is you can go to portal.azure.com, come into Azure Active Directory, come down to Security, and then come to Conditional Access. Conditional access at a high level are basically just if-then statements for allowing or disallowing access to your corporate network. So one of the things that we could do is we can create a new policy, and in the policy, one of the options that we can choose in there is that the device must be in compliance, and if it's not, disallow access to your corporate network. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and click on New Policy. And as you can see, there's a lot of sections in here, and these have to do with so the top part for assignments, user groups, cloud apps, actions, and conditions, those are all the if side of the equation. And then the access controls section, where you see grant and session, those are more of the then statements. So if we click on grant, what we can see in here is on the right-hand side, we get some grant access if the device is marked as compliant. So basically what that will do is it'll check the device, make sure that there's a compliance policy assigned to it, and if there is, the device has to be in compliance in order for access to be granted to the network. The if side of those things, where we add the users groups and the cloud apps and certain things like that, would be where we add which users we want this policy to apply to, which cloud apps we want this to apply to, and where we want those policies to be applied, and that would be the condition. So what type of device platform, what location, so we can add trusted sites where we do not apply conditional access policies from, known network, but if they're on a public network, then the conditional access policy applies. And we can also choose, which specific client apps they apply to, whether we're talking about the thick client policy or if we're forcing them to use, cloud apps. And that's a pretty high level overview of what a conditional access statement is. There is a ton of information over on docs.microsoft.com, conditional access, that walk you through how to set up all of these policies. I highly recommend checking that out. They are very powerful. And one other thing I'd like to say about conditional access policies is when you're putting in a conditional access policy, I would recommend putting them in report only mode first uh, before you turn them online, because it's pretty easy to lock yourself out of the console if you're not careful. So just put it in report mode only first and you'll be safe.
Wow, this was amazing, Thomas. Thank you so much for making it easier for our audience who's coming from an automation background. Their automation COEs sort of trying to set up Power Automate Desktop on Windows, and sort of endpoint manager sort of combined with all the Microsoft services with across Active Directory, conditional access gives them a single point to sort of set up their policies, and then govern, and then also sort of raise alerts in case they do see devices going out of compliance. So it's really, really cool. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching this video on how to set up an audit and compliance policies for your Power Automate Desktop client. For those of us who stuck around for the whole series, congratulations. You have deserved a well-earned award. And for those of you who are just tuning into this video, this was part of our overall series on managing Power Automate Desktop on Windows, and we'll put up a link to the entire series so you can check it out as well. And really appreciate and really thank you for spending all the time, and hopefully you found the series useful.